baby started to wake up, and I was like, be quiet, kids, be quiet. If any of you makes one sound, that's gonna be it, because it's so hard to get her to sleep. And I finally got her to sleep so I can have a minute to myself and actually make videos and think a little bit. And they almost woke her up. That would have been a nightmare. So, when you do like Muslim outreach, which I've done Muslim outreach for like 10 years, and how did I even get into this? Basically, I was an atheist, and I was a happy little atheist, I guess. I didn't think I was really missing anything until one of my friends committed suicide. And then it was like, wow, people really do die, and they die at any age. So I could die. And then I started to be confronted with my own mortality, and I had to think about what happens when people die. Do they go to heaven? Do they go to hell? What happens when people die? And what happens if I die? And that question started to kind of haunt me. And then I ran into Christians who had some answers, and there aren't a lot of them. A lot of Christians don't have good answers. A lot of them are just kind of like, yeah, I just believe it because my grandpa was a Christian, or my dad was a Christian, or somebody else was a Christian, so they're a Christian. And that's not a very good reason to be a Christian. Just because somebody else is a Christian is not a good reason to be a Christian. You need to be a Christian because it's the truth. And that's, I've always been a truth seeker. I'm an empath. And one of the downfalls of the empath is that they want to help everybody too much, to the point where they end up hurting themselves, and can get into abusive relationships, which I've had issues with that. And they can also overhelp people. Like the other day, I found a border family on the side of the road, and they had a baby with them, and I was just like, oh my goodness. So I stopped and gave them money and gave them food, and then they were like camped out by my coffee shop, and I went back and they were there the next day, and I was like, oh my goodness, they're out here in the heat with the baby, and this is day number 2, and I gave them more money, and I gave them some phone numbers to call. And then by day 3, they were still there on the corner with the baby. And I was like, oh no, this is not good. How are they going to get off this corner? So I keep thinking, like, what are they going to do with that baby in the heat? What's going to happen to them? So I ended up calling all sorts of different numbers for them, and I even called some of like my friends who spoke Spanish, like, can you come help me to tell them how to get to the DHS office? Like, somebody help me to help them. This is terrible. Where most people can go on with their life and go to work and ignore the border family and not even care that they're there. The empath is like, I have to help them, they're dying. The empath has to help them. So that's the big difference between an empath and just regular normal person. But I did end up having to call 211, and then 211 got me a translator to come out there, and like a social worker to help them to get their stuff figured out, because I just couldn't leave them on a street corner any longer. It was just terrible. So, but that's one of the problems with the empath, is that they overhelp people and they end up in these really crazy situations. So one of the crazy situations, basically I was giving out Christian material that I give out everywhere I go. And I gave it out at, I don't want to even say where this was, but gave out Christian material at a store, and there was Muslims working there. It was a Muslim run store, and one of them said, like, I have more questions. I've been thinking about Christianity, and I've been thinking about becoming a Christian, maybe leaving Islam, because I've fallen in with this group, which was a group of a not good organization. And I was like, okay. So then I set up a meeting, like time to meet in a public place, with this Muslim that had fallen in with a bad organization and had gotten themselves into some trouble where they were kind of scared for their life. And thinking about leaving Islam because they had fallen into this radical Islam, uh, like bad organization, very bad. So I didn't even want to be talking to this person once I figured out what they were part of, and I was like, oh my goodness, but I'm gonna at least give them a Bible and explain my side of why you should be a Christian, and that's about it. And then I never wanted to talk to them again because it was a little scary. Um, but I showed them where you look in the Bible and it talks about the birth of Jesus and Mary and how different that is from what the Quran says the birth of Jesus and Mary is. There's just such a big difference here between just the account of the birth of Jesus, and that tells you that the Quran is plagiarized and that the Quran is not accurate. I'm gonna have to read fast. Of course, she woke up. This is just my luck. And it says Joseph also went up from Galilee out of the city of Nazareth. So we have person, we have place, we have thing, into Judea, unto the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and lineage of David, to be taxed with Mary, his espoused wife, being great with child. So that's the virgin birth here, is what this is about. So it was that while they were there, the days were accomplished that she should be delivered. And she brought forth her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn. And there were in the same country shepherds abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And lo, the angel of the Lord came upon them, and the glory of the Lord shone round about them, and they were sore afraid. And the angel said unto them, Fear not, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people. So, an angel's coming at the birth of Jesus. An angel's there saying that they bring you good tidings, which will be for all people. What is this, this birth of Jesus that it's going to bring good tidings to all people, And it says, unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord. So that's, the biblical account of the birth of Jesus. And the angels are saying this is a special birth. This didn't happen when Muhammad was born. They didn't say, no angel came and said, this is going to be a blessing to the whole world. But when Jesus is born, the angels show up and say, this is going to be a blessing to the whole world. And that's a huge difference, And then let's read the Quran. So this is what I did with this Muslim. I said, let's just put the Bible next to the Quran and look at them both, and see what they have to say. So me and him, this person from a bad organization, sat at McDonald's and put the Bible next to the Quran and looked at what they both had to say. And it says, so she conceived him and withdrew him to a distant place. The pains of labor drove her to the trunk of a date palm. She said, oh, if only I had died before this and passed into oblivion. And there's no person, there's no place, thing, But a voice called out to her from below her. And this is Jesus speaking from her crotch. Do not, if you shake the trunk of this palm tree, it will drop fresh, ripe dates on you. And like I said, I've had my 7th baby, and you can't shake a palm tree when your baby's coming out of your crotch. You just can't. And eat and drink and rejoice. And if you see any human being, say, I have vowed a fast of silence. So, and that again doesn't make sense, because he's saying don't eat and don't drink, but if you see somebody, don't tell them you are not talking. You vowed a fast of not talking. So which is it? Is she vowing the fast of not eating and drinking, or is she vowing the fast of not talking? I'm sorry, I'm a perfectionist, and this is just not making sense, but we're reading it, I have vowed a fast of silence to the gracious God, and will not speak to any human being today. Okay. Carrying her child, she brought him to her people. They said, O Mary, You have indeed done something terrible. Sister of Aaron, your father was not an evil man, nor was your mother an unchaste woman. She pointed to the child and said, how shall we talk to someone who is a child in the cradle? But he said, I am God's servant. So, in the account of the virgin birth in the Quran, it's when the people see her carrying the child, like back to the village, I guess, she's carrying the child in her arms, and they're going, like, what's wrong with you? You've done something terrible because your father was not evil, your mom wasn't a whore. How could you have a baby outside of wedlock? And that again just shows that the Quran is plagiarized from the Bible. And the Bible, they were expecting this virgin birth to come out of the lineage of David. And there were people expecting the Messiah. And these shepherds all come to Jesus and they have these gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh because they were expecting this. In the Quran, this virgin birth was never expected by anybody. It was just, oh my goodness, you're a whore. That's the reaction around Mary in the Quran. Everyone's going, oh my goodness, you're a whore because this is a child born out of wedlock. But in the Bible, they were expecting the virgin long before then that it was prophesied there would be a virgin birth. Isaiah 7:14, you can see where it says a virgin shall bring forth a child, and this will be a sign to you, and that his name will be called Emmanuel, and Emmanuel means God with us. So I showed him this. I think it went over his head. Honestly, I feel like I could have done better when I was talking to him because this went way over his head. And that's the thing that you have to figure out when you're talking to Muslims. Am I talking way over their head? Because if I'm talking way over their head, then everything I say is just falling on deaf ears, and they don't understand anything I'm saying. There's a language barrier, and this is a complex subject, so maybe I'm over their head. And I think that's what happened, was that I was like way over his head. And then he started asking the questions about, well, how can God be three? And you could tell he was torn because Islam had gotten him to a place where he has seen some really gross violence coming from those who embrace the Quran. And he figured out that Islam doesn't have the answers, but he was afraid of the idea of worshiping three gods or polytheism. So that's what was hanging him up, this idea that the Christian God is actually three gods and we're just polytheist and we're just bad and evil. So that was where he was kind of stuck in between the two, where he's like, Islam is obviously wrong and what they're doing is horrible, but Christianity, I don't know if I can embrace that either. So, but I was trying to give him as many answers as I could, and I feel like this was over his head even. But you can see the big contrast between the virgin birth in the Quran and the virgin birth in the Bible.